So just to clarify, I don't think I'm going to live up to 100, so this is more like a one-third life crisis, especially since the gallery job I'm going to be talking about kind of shaved off a couple of years off my life expectancy. Hi, my name is Tiffany, and this is a video about my quarter life crisis and how I ended up moving halfway across the world during a pandemic because of it. Let's begin. So this begins in the fall of 2018. I had graduated from my Master's of Russian Literature, and I basically had a revelation slash meltdown that I did not want to be in academia. So I was looking for a job, and because I felt like I had majored in unemployment, I was looking back on previous experiences, and one that really stood out was an internship I completed in my third year at a museum in Russia, and I really enjoyed learning about the processes that goes into planning an exhibition. So when I was looking for a job, I was looking for mostly museum and gallery jobs. So I eventually landed a gallery job, and everything was perfect. I'm kidding. It was honestly one of the most stressful experiences of my life. I wouldn't really recommend it unless you like living in pure chaos, or if you wanted to have a first-hand experience of Dante's Inferno. There was just so much screaming, there was so much chaos, nothing went well. If anything could go wrong, it would go wrong. So it just got me in this really weird headspace. I remember one time I was making my breakfast and I just put bread on a pan, and I also made myself a coffee, and I was just mentally preparing myself for the day ahead, and eventually I started smelling burnt toast, and I was like, oh my god, am I having a stroke? Can I use this as an excuse to get out of work? And no, it was just like my bread had burnt. So I kind of decided it wasn't really for me. I also did keep a notebook of my daily activities, but it mostly ended up being a diary. So I actually have it with me right here. So I would like to do a dramatic reading to just kind of give you the idea of where I was at mentally in this job. I hate every second I am awake and working here. I'm willing to do demeaning, menial tasks if it gets me somewhere, but this is just degrading. I hate everything here. I physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and one might even say metaphysically, given how much I dissociate here, cannot handle it anymore. So I eventually quit. I didn't have a job lined up, and I found out the hard way that the only thing worse about having a job you hate is not having a job. So I applied for a bunch of jobs. I didn't really hear back, and then I kind of had this like crazy idea that if I moved, all my problems would be solved, and that spoiler alert, that doesn't really work. So I moved to Hong Kong during the protests last year, applied for a bunch of jobs. I didn't really hear back. I got a couple of interviews, but nothing really materialized. So I eventually moved back home. I found a gallery job, moved on with my life, closed that chapter of my life. And then in late December, almost like at the end of December, I got a job offer from a museum. I interviewed at, in, I want to say like mid-October. So I'd already kind of forgotten about it because it had been such a long time ago. And this was actually the day before I was supposed to fly out to Scotland, and back when travel was the thing. And I had all these really dramatic montages envisioned of me standing by the sea, having the sea breeze like blow through my hair while I contemplate this like life-changing decision. Because for me, moving from a gallery to a museum was a really big deal. For those of you who don't know, a gallery is basically like a bookstore, while a museum is more like a library. So it was a big deal to me. So I mean, basically I just ended up drinking like a gin and tonic out of a can and emailed them being like, yeah, perfect, I'll take the job. By the time everything came together, it was mid February. And in February, it was becoming clear that coronavirus was a bigger issue than they had originally thought it would be. So I pushed back my start date. HR was very understanding, and by mid-March, it was starting to become a global issue, and things weren't looking great back home. So I was like, okay, like, I don't know what my professional prospects at this point will look like in the next year or so. So I decided to take the last flight from Toronto to Hong Kong, well, last direct flight. And yeah, I moved during the pandemic. It was really crazy. The airport was really dystopian. I've never seen it so empty. There were only a couple of flights flying out of Pearson that day. And also, we were seated like every other person, which is really crazy because I haven't ever seen that on a flight to Hong Kong. So it was so crazy. I ended up getting a COVID test. It was mandatory. I quarantined in my hotel room for 14 days, and then it went by really quickly. I just played a lot of Animal Crossing, watched a lot of Gossip Girl, basically regressed into like elementary school me, and then once I got out of quarantine, I looked for an apartment, started on the job, and all is well. For now. So it was only after I finished recording my video that I realized I didn't really go into details of the logistics of moving during the pandemic. So here are just a couple of details. So it actually was quite difficult to get a flight out of Toronto to Hong Kong, considering that there used to be 3 daily direct flights. So I ended up getting on what was the last direct flight from Toronto to Hong Kong. And once I got on the plane, a lot of people were wearing hazmat suits. I had a face mask on and I had a hoodie, but a lot of the other passengers, they didn't go to the washroom, they also didn't eat, and I think there was generally just a sense of paranoia. So once I got to the airport, I was given a wristlet with a tracking number that I had to register in an app once I was in my quarantine location. So I quarantined in a hotel for 14 days, and during those 14 days, I had food brought to my door by the hotel staff, but there was never any direct interaction between the staff and I because they would just knock on the door, leave the food, and once they were gone, I would grab the food, close the door, and go back into my room. So yeah, that was my experience moving during the pandemic. Let me know if you have any questions, leave them below, or I don't know, just message me.